Perth Linux Users Group, talking Linux and open source.
All right, welcome to our plug. Thank you to SpaceCubed for providing the space for us today. They provided a collab working space for meetings and startup companies. Anything else we share about them? All right, thanks for coming along. I'm going to be talking about Tarsnap, which has the tagline, online backups for the truly paranoid, which is the slogan used by the company that creates this product. So my name's Niall. I've been in Perth about 3 years now. Been coming to Plug about 2.5 years. I've used Linux for a fair while, but I'm not a sysadmin and I'm not a software engineer by trade. I had a background in process control and industrial automation, and now I'm in system security. So backups are quite prevalent, and this is very much a personal journey for myself. All good? Yeah, so as I was saying, this is a personal journey where obviously we know the backup theory of sort of 3 backups, grandparent, parent, and child. 2 of those in different media and 1 off-site. I haven't had to do backups in a large enterprise scale, but in my personal sense, I always struggled with the off-site backup. So I was looking around after I did have a big loss of data about a decade ago, looking around for something that I could push some of my critical documents and files off-site, but also with that, you wonder how safe they are. And when I was talking critical files, it was things to do with my license for my work, music and media that I'd purchased and was going to be hard to get again. I wasn't looking to back up terabytes and terabytes of Linux ISOs that I'd downloaded through a protocol. So this is very much personal data, tax stuff as well. So in saying that I wanted to store it offline or off in the cloud, I was very wary that this was highly personal and sensitive data, so I wanted a solution that could help me with that too. So I stumbled across Tarsnap, and this was developed by extending the functionality of tar. We all know the tape archive utility. It's quite ubiquitous with Unix-like systems. Has been around for, well, almost as long as it has itself. So it maintains all that functionality of tar and extends some as well. The service itself runs on AWS. So you encrypt on the client side and it deduplicates and compresses before pushing it to that S3 cloud to be stored. And it runs on the old AWS where it's the triple redundancy, where it's 2 data centers can go down and still be live. The newer one is just a single data center. So it's not open source per se. The client-side software is fully auditable. Just the actual AWS service is not open source. So you do have to place some trust, but going into system security and a lot of the internet is built on chains of trust. And I'll talk about the developer in a second. And I do place a fair bit of trust in that person. Obviously, as I mentioned, the data that I store is sensitive to myself. But from their background, and I trust that the product, well, as I said, the encryption side is all auditable, and they're very open with how they run the service too. But in saying that it's not open source, they contribute a lot back to the open source community. libarchive, which is the main library that the service is built around, they've pushed back over 40 commits for that, as well as scrypt. They've done some of the key derivation, and if I check my notes here, the file encryption code, they've pushed back to that as well. So, plus they do a lot of sponsorship of open source stuff. Some university prizes. So Dr. Colin Percival, who wrote the software, he did a mathematics degree at, where was it? Simon Fraser University, which I believe is in Canada. He started there when he was 13, before going to do a doctorate at Oxford. And his doctoral thesis revolved around problems in string matching, data compression, and file synchronization. He also wrote the seminal, or the initial paper for, if I just check here, it was for, called Cache Missing for Fun and Profit, but it was the first paper that looked at side channel, utilizing encryption on side channel, here we are, include cryptographic attacks against shared caches in Intel's hyperthreading processors. And this is where it spurned him to create Tarsnap, because at the time he was the FreeBSD security officer and a core team member, and he had a lot of keys and stuff for that project on his laptop, and wondered, if I lose the laptop, it's all gone, and decided to build a backup system, an online backup system that surpassed what was available at the time. Work for it began in around 2006, and I think it was released in 2008. And he's also an AWS hero for getting FreeBSD instance on EC2. And as I said, the whole Tarsnap backup service revolves around AWS S3. I don't think there was too much more I was going to say to those things right now. So there's 4 design principles that govern Tarsnap: security, flexibility, efficiency, and utility. So security, the ethos was backups should be secure against attackers ranging from script kiddies to major world governments. Even if they compromise the system on which the backups are being stored, the backups shouldn't be compromised in themselves. Backups are supposed to be a tool for mitigating damage and not potential vulnerability to worry about. So the encryption algorithms are baked into that client side. They all revolve around the key, that key infrastructure. And I'll go on to talk about the keys, in a little bit. But what he's getting at there is that should that S3 service be compromised, they can get all that data they want. It should not be crackable unless they've got your key. So the flexibility, that backups should be flexible and convenient. You decide when you want to create an archive, and you should be able to store in it whatever files you want. So S3 being object storage, it should just put anything you want there. If you decide you want to delete an archive, you should be able to do it whenever you want without impacting other archives, and there should be no arbitrary limits on the amount of archives you've stored, or how often you create new archives, or how long you can keep them for. So that's the flexibility. In saying that, a machine can only run a backup with one key at a time. You can have multiple machines all backing up at the same time on your service, but each machine with one key is only acting on one archive, and then it can change to a different key or change to a different archive with the same key. But it is advised that you only one key per machine. You'll need to rebuild the cache each time. So in efficiency, backup should be efficient using minimum amount of storage and bandwidth. If you archive the same file twice, it should still only be uploaded and stored once. Being that you pay by the pico dollar per byte, so I think it's 25 cents per gigabyte month and 25 cents per gigabyte in the bandwidth. In saying that, I think I've been using it for about 6 or 8 years now. I've only got about 4 gigabyte, 5 gigabyte in that cloud storage, and I think I paid $15 over that 8 years. So I don't even notice it. I only topped it up a couple of months ago, and I think I put $15 in there to begin with. And even in my testing, just for this, I was only using 10, 15 megabyte files and up and down. I threw $10 on a different account, and it hasn't touched it yet. So, as I said, I wasn't looking to store terabytes, but even if you did, it would cost a sum. But if you're storing that much, you'd have the money to do it too. And a utility. The backup should be provided as a utility with linear per gigabyte pricing, forcing people to figure out ahead of time how much data they want to store and what they want to back up so that they can sign up for the right plan was against Colin's ethos with creating this service. And even though it's profitable for him, he thinks it's fair, it's not gouging. Compared to some other archive things, it is on the pricier side, but I think it provides some other services that might offset that. Unfortunately, the talk didn't fully get there. I'll get to that towards the end. I wanted to do some comparisons, but as we'll find out, time is the enemy of us all. And so having some customers subsidised for other customers is inherently unfair. So they're the four guiding principles in a nutshell for the Tarsnap. So here's a quick overview visualization of what's going on. Obviously, we've got Alice with the data. I mentioned there's the cache. So this is where it hashes the blocks. It works on a block level for all files. Has a sliding window of chunks so that it can do that deduplication. So that's all done in the cache. Encryption is done locally on the machine, on the client machine, compared with what's in the cloud and then compressed and uploaded to the diff. And that was another thing that Dr. Percival did a lot of work in, was binary diffs, BSD or BSDiff, and the FreeSB update tool, binary sort of updates of kernel versions. He did a lot of work on that field while he was a core team member. So he's got a very good understanding of binary and cryptography. So binary file level stuff and cryptography. So we can see it's segmented and duplicate the hashes of the blocks in the cache. And that's one thing if you're, as I said, it advises using one key per machine, because if you start using multiple keys, you need to rebuild the cache each time you want to use a different key, because obviously it's pertinent to that data that you're using in your archives. So maybe in the config it could get down and you could manage the multiple keys, but it's not advised, and I don't think supported. If you went for them for support, they would advise the one key per machine. So and there we have on the right this Tarsnap server that's storing everyone else's data, and obviously it's all segregated there. So it very much comes back down to the key, and the key itself can be passphrased as well. So even if someone gets to your computer, it is still protected in a passphrase sense before it can be utilised against the service. Yep.
I guess it is useful to I don't know if shared keys works that way, but at least you can back up similar data from two different machines with a lot of overlap and a lot of shared blocks.
Yep.
Whereas differently, there was going to be twice the storage.
Yeah, and that's one thing that if you do share the key across machines, that you need to be aware of when you're running these backups because of that overlap and things like that. And it is doable. And even as I'll get further into the keys, you can split them apart too and just have read only, delete only, write only, which is all derived from the initial key. So it's quite an interesting system. I don't think I've seen like that before, but as I said, I haven't done deep dives on other systems either. So that's one thing that would have liked to have done for this talk, but I'd like to open up a discussion after it to get to the nitty gritty of it. Because yeah, as I said, I'm not using a lot of money on this, but it's certainly interesting to see other services. So as I touched on with the cache, it maintains all the deduplication information within that local cache. Hash at the block level, therefore, before uploading, you can see what you have done before and only upload the fresh new changes between files and things. As mentioned, the transferring key is not advised. The cache needs to be rebuilt, but it's not out of the realms of possibility either. You just have to have good management. And as I mentioned, if damaged, the cache will need to be rebuilt. And there's a lot more subtleties within the cache that probably go beyond my understanding. But for my needs, and as I said, this is a personal journey, it wasn't a huge expose of this service. But yeah, the classic old FS check. So no doubt we've all experienced that at some stage or another. It's just a file system, so if maybe you cancel a transfer halfway through, it might get out of sync between what's actually being pushed and what's actually in the cache. Or if you try and store the cache in, say, ephemeral memory, so if you have a reboot and it's all gone, you need to rebuild it in that way. It's part of the inherent makeup of this utility, but you as a user should never have to go and touch that. That's all sort of semi-back-end for the client encryption. You interface with the tool and the files you want to update. You don't have to go and touch the cache. And in saying that, look, I find it works for my needs, and it was designed for Unix sysadmins and developers. As you can set it up, it's highly scriptable to set up and just keep on rolling backups and only backing up things as you go. Obviously, if you're going to use it for databases, you'll want to freeze those databases just like any sort of backup. If you try and back something up while it's changing, it's inherent dangers in that. So, and this is all a command line thing. If you lose the key, you've lost access to all those archives. There's no regenerating that key for that archive. So that's one danger. And that was one problem I got to with the key. The whole point was having these backups in case a catastrophe happened for my own service. What I've got at the moment is printed in an OCR compatible font, laminated pages at my father's on the East Coast. YubiKey actually had a sale on May the 4th. I don't know if anyone saw that. $54 off on YubiKeys, 2 YubiKeys, $54 off each. So I'll be looking at putting my key, or my main key, onto one of those into that service if possible, which I think it should be doable. So yeah, the cache is, as we saw in this picture here, that sort of feedback loop on the cache, the hashes of the blocks and the segments and the deduplication, it's all inherent in this whole service. So this is how it doesn't repush files you've already done, blocks that are already in the cloud. It only pushes the changes, which saves on money for both storage and transfer. So I've touched on the keys a couple of times, and I mentioned the main key. So you can just generate the key that does everything: read, write, delete, and nuke options. But these keys can be split. So you can split that key into just a read-only key, a write-only key, a read and deletes need reading to be able to delete, and you can have a key that's just a nuke option, which just destroys every archive that was ever created with that key. And I'll show it in the demo. Interestingly, when you do nuke an archive set, it will ask you to type no tomorrow as an affirmation that you actually want to get rid of everything. There's no fat fingers there. So an interesting option, but yeah, I'm not sure where you'd want to use it. Maybe if you're in some kind of testing and development and I just want to walk away and just nuke the lot. So, and know that it's all gone. So then you don't pay those gigabyte per month storage or anything.
Those permissions on the keys, is that just enforced by the service, or will a key used to write backups capable of decrypting the backup?
Yeah, I don't even think it can stage the data to interact with the online service.
Okay.
I'd have to. Oh yeah. James asked whether the key, so those separate keys, could a delete key be used? What was it to check?
If I've got a key which I can use to write new backups, that also be used to decrypt backups which have already been created, or are these permissions just being enforced by the backend service?
Yep. So if he's got a key for writing new backups, can it be used to delete backups that already exist or read or anything? Is it all on the backend server? I believe it would be to actually stage the data to be able to interact with what's online. I'd have to double check that, but yeah, an excellent question. So as I was saying, they can be split: read, write, delete, and nuke, and you can combine them as you want. And if you choose delete, it'll automatically choose read because it needs to be able to read those archives before it can delete them. And you can passphrase all those keys as well as the main key can be passphrased, which is highly advisable, obviously. It's no use having all this encrypted online storage where someone can grab the key off your computer and just walk away with it all. It makes no sense at all, really, to have it unpassphrased, but it's not enforced. If you so desire to roll like that, it's up to you. And as I mentioned, if you lose that key, those archives are gone. There's no I forgot my archive key option online. Looking at the website, I don't even think there's I forgot my password on your account either. But if you're going to be using this service, you've obviously got password hygiene or system that you will be using before you go further in this system. As I mentioned, I was going to compare with rsync.net. I hadn't really even heard of this. Because once I found Tarsnap, I hadn't really looked around. It was suiting my needs, and as I said, it wasn't costing me next to nothing. It was sort of set and I forget. I had a script that once a week, and just about every time it ran, there'd be no differences because those folders that I was archiving weren't changing. The only recent one was that I updated some of my music that I'd purchased online, and I didn't want to, even though I love the band and I want to support them and would happily buy it again, it didn't make economic sense to do that all the time. So, and they're small enough that I can put them up there for next to nothing. Yes.
So does the application automatically do what do you call it, updates only? So only saves the changes?
Yep. That's by default. The question was, does the application only upload the changes? And that's correct. The whole deduplication, if it's already in the cloud, it won't send it again. It knows it's there, and only changes to the file at the very block level get pushed. Yeah. So, and that's what gifts itself to scripting as well. It just allows these things to keep rolling, and only necessary updates actually get pushed. So.
Just a curious question here. The service, do they use spinning discs or tape as the media?
Well, the question was, does the service, the Tarsnap service, use spinning discs or tape archive, tape as the archive process? This is all on AWS S3, so I assume it's SSD and spinning discs. Yeah, obviously using the tape archive utility or extending that functionality, you might wonder if it's their tape archive. Yeah. Have they got tape for Glacier? Have they? Ah, okay.
Grace's design, so it could be tape.
Right. Okay. I hadn't realised that. That's interesting. Yeah. And there's inherent values in tape as well. Yeah. So I hope to do have the same data set, do the backups, change that data set subtly, do the backups. As I mentioned, I only heard from rsync.net from Nick last plug meeting, and as I mentioned, Tarsnap was doing the job for me. And this, as I said, this is a personal journey. Want to open up conversation and explore things for my own benefit, but it's not something that I need in my professional work. This is very much a personal thing. But saying that, Stripe uses Tarsnap for backup. There was another one. I'd have to look up who they were. I'm not sure if they were a game development or something else, but yeah, they used it as well. But yes, as I mentioned, time, the most precious commodity on earth, got away on me. Work ramping up and personal things. Yes.
Speaking of time, is this application?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. The question was, is this application compatible with cron? And absolutely, it's designed for cron. Set a script, trigger it with cron, away you go. Just does the incremental backups. And if your script so desires, you can prune your older backups as well. So.
And what's the system requirements to run it? We wouldn't run on an old 486. There's an operating system?
The question was, what are the system requirements? I'd say it'd be very low level. Yes, the encryption aspect might take some power, but it would just take longer, wouldn't it? So depending on your use case, if it can load the package, it should be fine to run. It's just the compression and the encryption that would take a little bit longer, and the network capability to push it onto the wire and get it up to the service. So I was going to go and do some demos now. I hadn't cleaned up the slides. That was a placeholder. So I'll just jump over to the if I raise that. Is that big enough? Should we go bigger? That's good size. Okay. So in this folder, I've made some files. I just made them 5 meg each. They're all different size, all different hash sizes. In the directory above it, I think I've got the keys. And here's one where I made 2 keys on this system, and flipping back between them, I had to rebuild and stuff. I've got a file there to add a couple of extra megabytes to a file, and we can see the push and things like that. So it's very much, as I said, extends tar, and I'd say most of us would all have used tar at some stage, if not to create archives, probably certainly to extract some online that may have come down, pulled something. I think it's pretty ubiquitous that tar, was it XVF, extract verbose, and the file you select. I'd say most people would have done that, whether it's a tar, blah blah blah. And so this is no difference. It's the Tarsnap command. In a lot of the tutorials and things you'll find online, it's all shown as root, because I think built in, it's the key is held in root. But you can use it as a normal user. You just have to define the key file that you're going to use. Now it's just in the directory above me here, because I'm in the file, the folder with the files, and just list the archives we have at the moment. The biggest thing, sorry.
Could you sudo?
Yes, of course, yeah. Yeah, you could do that. Yeah, and it depends on how. Oh, the question was, could you use sudo or do as? Yeah, definitely available to raise those privileges. Yeah. So it doesn't look like we've got any archives there at the moment. So we'll just key file. Now, as I said, the deduplication and pushing to the cloud takes a little while. The longest time is in the restoration and pulling it back out. But that's why I kept the file sort of small. So we need to give it a name that we're going to call the archive, and then what we're pushing. Now, I wonder if this will ask that the cache is not correct. I can't remember which key I was using before to do this. So we've got the create archive, the file name of the archive we're using, and then the files we're pushing. Yes, Nick? I'm not sure. Let's try it. I think if we stop it, we might just have to rebuild the cache. But I think it will take one. Maybe not.
And from where do you get your keys?
The key is, well, here we are. The key is generated whenever you want. So that's another command, and I was going to do that towards the end, but we can do it whenever. So there's tarsnap-key management, or key gen is where you generate one, and then key management is where you can split the main key into read or a write or a delete key, whatever you want. So it's all part of the package upon download.
As I was thinking of using, let's say, natural log.
Oh, yep.
So you could say use characters from 98 to 200.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to remember, you just have to know it's E 98 200.
Yeah, just where you're starting and where you're finishing. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter, you don't have to keep any record. That's E 98 200.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find E any time.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, can you create your own key, or is it?
No. The key is very much built into the service because it's using multiple encryption algorithms like AES and HMAC and things, depending on parts of the service.
I'm only guessing, but I think it's basically a random key that you can set your own passphrase.
Yeah. So Nick has mentioned that it's probably a random key generated specific to the service, but you can passphrase it with. Sorry, your name Tom?
Yeah.
Your name is Tom, is it? Alex. Sorry. So Alex mentioned creating your own key, but it's probably applicable to put that on the passphrase of the key. Yes, it's part of it's generated on the client machine. Yeah, and that code is fully auditable. It's just the pushing to the service in the cloud, which is not auditable in an open source sense. So we can see there that it did do verbose, and it's got the ADF archived, and that's what it's pushed there. We can see all archives we have in the cloud, so that should be about 50 meg with the.
You've got 10 files.
Yeah.
And yet you pushed 1, 2, 3, 4 archives.
No. That's the total archives that I have under this key. This archive that I pushed and the new data that I pushed. So they're all the same numbers, but yeah, it's interesting that the compressed size is larger. But whether that's the block and your these type files are purely random, yeah.
So they couldn't.
Yeah. So I just dd dev random into these output files just to create them, just to have something and having them unique as well. So let's we'll add that onto the end of a file here. And if we do the same thing now, you can't push like update an existing archive, you create a new archive, and this is where the scripting and you just slap the date, time on the end of it. So you can have your archive name, unique date, time, and this is where it's rolling and, oh, what's happened to the screen share? So you must change the archive name and where you'd usually in a script and just put the date time on the end, and that would give you a point of reference when you're looking at it. So I've just manually plugged 2 here. So what we've got is that data in the cloud, I've added 3 megabytes to one file. We should only have that 3 megabytes go up. And this should be a bit quicker because it's all cached in the directory now. So there we go.
Okay, 979.
There's some interesting interesting numbers there that you could get down to. And just like a tar, you can pull out singular files or the whole archive. It is advised that you give full paths to all your data, so on restoration. So if you're doing etc, backing up etc, it'll populate back to that, but also you want to be mindful of what you're pulling out too. You don't, like, that could be updated with new keys and things, and you don't want to pull out that and dump it over the top. There are provisions, and I haven't got it in the demo, where you can not overwrite newer files. So if it's the same file, or if it's an older file, you might be able to pull over the top. If it's a newer file, which way you want to go. There's lots of variations that can be done within that service. I haven't got down to that deep level. As I said, I'm very much pretty static directories that I'm just keeping going. But if you so desire to use this on a development, like your code development, or if you're running a lot of servers and wanted to keep them there, you get down to the nitty-gritty of the subtleties of this service. It seems very powerful in what it can do. So what was I going to do next? We've done the just changing data there. So now if we look at our archives, we should have the 2 there, the initial one and the second one we pushed. Then you can go and grab. We'll go TF. So you can see the files within that archive and go from there. And then say you want to extract the single one, it's all doable. Pull out single files. So we could have a look at the key gen and maybe splitting keys for read-only and delete. Next, was there any questions on that? You can see how that could be just easily scripted to just keep on rolling and updating as you see fit.
Create a tiny file with today's date and extract it.
Yep. So, what is the command? Is it just date? Oh.
Date. Okay, so it's just date.
Oh, yeah. Should have just checked that worked, actually. Well, there's some
horrible accident to delete that file.
Yeah. So we'll just make sure that yep, it's got something in there. So we can see it's gone there. We've lost it. We should be able to get it back. Sorry? This is ZSH, but yeah, it's a shell. It's a shell interface. So a textual interface to the PC itself, and what have we. There we go. Exactly along the lines of tar. The way you create the archives, extract them, there's no change there. It just adds functionality on of the encryption and push to cloud feature with the caching and deduplication stuff. So a lot of that muscle memory that we may have already had for archiving with tar, it just extends that functionality to provide some newer bells and whistles. So we were talking about the key gen before. Tarsnap. Key gen. Now, if I can remember from the muscle memory, it is archive file, I think. Key file, so I need to give it the key file I'm calling it, and then obviously the account that I'm logging in or I'm associating the billing to. Then you give it a machine name, and then you can passphrase it as well. So I may as well just grab this. I think I'll just change that. I might have a file already there. I just need to go and grab that. Now this should be fine to see. I'm only just going to grab it here. And as I said, I'll put the switch on the end for passphrased. So here you can enter your 128-bit character passphrase as you so desire. So I'm just going to use plug. Just because it pops up every time you want to interact with that key file. There's no like sudo where it will store that for a certain time. It is every time it's used, you will supply the passphrase. Yeah, I'm not sure whether, there might be some option that you can set that, but maybe that's why it's not enforced, so that it can run as cron properly, and then you protect your keys another way, whether you put them in rotation. As you always say, James, do you rotate them clockwise or anti-clockwise? So we've got a new key file there, so plug key file. You see there that. So within that Tarsnap key file, this will have read, write, delete, and nuke functionality. So, and that's one thing I haven't actually done, and we'll do it now. We'll create the key file that maybe does read only and compare it to the actual main key file, because I assume that it's sectional. Well, it's obviously derived from this, so there's something there that. So just grab this one.
In some way, it's a bit like PGP, where there's a public key and a private key. So write for a key, you can send you stuff, and then you've got the private key, which you can use to do other stuff that you can.
Yeah, similar word. This is all wrapped in together, but you can extract them. So that main key can do the whole lot, but you can split it apart and give parts to people. So if you just only want to be the person that pushes to this archive, but someone else can actually pull from it, you can split it apart like that. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So what have we got? And this is where it's not the key gen, it's the key management now. So Tarsnap key management, obviously out file switch is the same. I'm making it the read-only key. We just have to change this because the actual main key that we're pulling it from is the new one we just created, which I believe is that plug. So it looks significantly shorter. One's 5.1K, one's 2.5K. I mean, we could get into the char level, but obviously it's subsection. It's a section of that main key, and it only gets X amount of functionality. So if we go back to our where we just listed the files, we'll do 3. We'll change this. Well, hang on, we only generated that key. We haven't actually made any archives with that key. So we'll need to create an archive with that key that we just generated. So we'll quickly do that. So we'll make it with the big key. Sorry? Oh, I want the guess. Thanks, good eyes. Thanks for that. Oh, yep, we'll get verbose with it, yep. And let's just put the date file just to oh yeah, it's in this directory already, yep. The problem with going up and down through history, isn't it?
There's a question from Harry.
Oh, yep. We just change what we're looking at.
Harry's asking if it's possible to store it in your own cloud storage, or what can only you do through Tarsnap?
No, so the question was, is it possible to push it to your own storage? And no, it's very much wrapped in with the Tarsnap service. As I said, that the client-side encryption and caching and everything's auditable, but the actual service is not. That's closed source, unless you read the client side and was able to interface your own software with that. But it's very much you use the service. Yeah. So you can see here we've got a new key. We have to rebuild the cache because it has no knowledge of what cache for this key. So this is what I'm saying, where multiple keys on a machine could get messy. Probably doesn't lend itself to scripting. If you're pushing more data, doing a check every time, that would just get tedious. But it's fairly easy to get past. So it'll poll the service. There's no archives actually there, so it's pretty easy to make the cache directory regarding it. But if we switch back to the other key that we were using, then we'd have to rebuild the cache for it. And I'm not sure, there might be stuff within the config file where you can set different cache locations for different keys and manage it that way. But that'd be up to the end user to try. It's in, the default is user local Tarsnap cache. So multiple users on machine. I'm not sure that's, sorry? I think with this one I modified the ownership of user local. Because as I said, all the stuff is generally given as root for usage of it. So we were going to use this one. So if we wanted to go and read that, we don't need the date file. Let's just keep that archive name. And we'll use the plug read-only key. We should be able to read the contents of that archive. But say we wanted to delete it, not available to that key. So this is where you can split it apart, get some functionality for someone only pushing, someone only looking, someone only deleting, which is a pretty handy feature of the service, I think, if you were looking for a multi-user environment of the same key system. Apart from that, I didn't have too much else, I think. Oh, I was going to show the nuke option, because I did enjoy that when I came across it, that to delete all archive. Oh, well, we've got the wrong key. Which is, yeah. Please type no tomorrow to continue. And I'm not sure if it's case sensitive. Error exited from previous errors. Yep. Just to let that adrenaline kick in a little bit more. Like there's no coming back, unless it's unless you could cancel it. I'm not sure. There might be a sleep in there to give you a chance to go, oops, that's the wrong key. So yeah. What keys do we have here? Yeah. So we had the ones from here. Yeah, we were using them on the start. We might as well do that again. Yeah, and we can. One thing to have archive names there, but there we go. Yeah, well, thanks very much for coming to the talk. Was there any other questions?
Other users just have to get into the service by having a username. I can save all my stuff on one laptop and go to Sydney.
Yep, as long as you bring the key with you. Yeah, you can't, there's no way that the service will provide that key. It's generated locally. So if you throw the key on a USB, go to Sydney, log into another computer, install the package, interface with that key, you'll pull them down there, yeah.
That key was what, nearly 5K?
Yeah, the main key was 5K, yeah. Yeah. I had wondered, and you know, backups are never good until you actually restore and test them. Yeah. My whole thought, oh, this OCR, bloody text, and then, I'll be able to recover the key. Never actually tested that, so that's worth a try. I have seen someone online that bumped theirs down into a QR code. Yes. So whether that could be an option, I'm not sure, but it's worth wandering through. My next step is probably throw it on a YubiKey that's on its way.
There was something I saw years ago when we started.
Yep.
It was effectively before QR code, but it was a QR code that I paid for to do the same thing too.
Right.
Just watch out.
Yes. Okay.
Another question. You've done everything from Tarsnap here. Is there any web user interface to see anything, any stats that you've uploaded? I know you might not be able to see the contents of that.
Yep, you can, if you've got an account, and I'm not sure if this is populated yet. So you can see your total usage. I think it goes back 90 days or something. And you can do it per machine and things like that. As I said, I was doing a lot of the testing with my previous account, or my other account, and I threw this one on just to have that separation if I did nuke, and I was like, I didn't want to do anything with my data. So just let me log out of that, and let's go to the other one, and we'll have a quick look. I did do some uploads there. Oh, I don't want to log in again with that one.
In what jurisdiction is the service?
Well, it's saying it's North America. The developer resides in Canada. Assuming that those 3 data centers are all in the same region, or maybe they're cross-region, or what does Amazon call them? Sorry? Availability zones. Yeah, so you can see here's some of the bytes and storage and stuff. So these daily storages, it's in the, what did I have? What's that? 1.4 gig, there is it, of 1.1 cents. I think that's what it is. So that was probably in flight. I did upload, I think, 1.3 gig the other day. But you can see there that, yeah, there we are. I've thrown on $15 there, and I think that's the second lot of $15 I've done in 7 years or something, for 4 or 5 gig. Yeah.
Very cost effective.
Yeah, and but even talking about cost effective, that was one thing that caught my eye, was when I was looking at the rsync stuff. Tarsnap being 25 cents a gigabyte per month per bandwidth. Rsync.net was 9 cents. So nearly 3 times cheaper. I just didn't get around to checking whether the encryption thing, obviously you can do your own encryption before uploading and things like that. I did like that this was built into this service, and I could just, it was just a one-stop command line that I just didn't have to do too much about.
It's probably worth doing a bit of comparison. So one difference is that rsync.net is does multiple things.
Yep.
But it does have a minimum archive of, I think it's 18 US a year.
All right.
So Plug has an account, and so we're paying 18 US or 25 Australian per year for 100 gigs of storage.
Right.
Which we're only using, gigs or something like that at the moment.
Yeah.
So
But there's the capacity. I think for the 100 gigs of this, it would be more than $18, I would dare say. Yeah. But
if you're starting small, it's a good place to start with reported data.
Yeah. Yeah, when I saw those prices of rsync, I was definitely going to give it a more look for other data. Maybe it didn't reach this tier where I was like, this is very personal stuff that I didn't want to lose, given a catastrophe.
I think also the difference is that this is a client and a service together. They work very smoothly. Rsync.net was originally designed with an rsync in mind. So you rsync your data to the far end, and they will take snapshots of it.
Right, because I did, when I cursory glance, I did like they were all ZFS backend. That was one thing where I had that major data loss, and I was wondering, oh, if I lost this. That's where I found ZFS, and in the same process found Tarsnap, and I fell in love with ZFS. I really, really like it. Don't use it to probably 5% of its capacity, but for the things I do to push around at home, it makes things very easy for me. And I did like that rsync.net was on a ZFS backend. That does it do ZFS send and receive? Or?
So I think they do now.
Right.
And the other option is a tool called Augmatic.
Yep.
It used to be called Attic, and then it's being developed.
Okay.
The new one's called Ball. And it does have a lot of the same features, so local encryption, block-based, rolling block-based deduplication.
Yep.
So a lot of similar features, but that is a system where you can run your own client and server. But by putting it with your own encrypted key off-site, gets you to a similar spot that Tarsnap does, but Tarsnap obviously starts with a smaller amount of stored data. You can get good value for less than a year's worth of parsing.
Yeah. And that was one thing that I did look at. If I was self-hosting myself in the cloud, is I had to manage and stuff. And since I didn't do that kind of management day to day for a job, it was a little bit foreign to me. I didn't mind noodling around at home, and but if it was holding my critical stuff there, I'd have to get a bit more intimate with it. And this Tarsnap worked for me because all that side was handled. But look, there's many ways to do things, and I always like hearing different approaches to achieve the same point, the same thing.
There's a bit of convergent evolution. So rsync doing the binary diff idea. If you want to do that client side, you need a slightly managed tweak back toward this.
Right.
And Tarsnap have a very similar system with a local cache, which you may have to regenerate if you move to it.
Yep.
And I think this works, so you can have a write-only key.
Yes.
So I don't think Ball does that. It's been like a planned idea.
Right.
But you can have a write-only key where all your servers just write, and they can never read back their data. You need a separate read key to do that.
Yep.
That's a nice option.
Yeah, and that functionality I've never used myself. I've just used the same key. But if you were, as we were saying, across an enterprise and looking for these variations in that kind of functionality, it's available. So yeah.
How many years has Tarsnap been going?
It started in 2008. Development started 2006. And I think the developer said it became profitable in 2009. So
that's another thing they have in common is the open source friendly thing. So Tarsnap is friendly in terms of you can examine and look at the source for the client. So you know exactly how it's supposed to be working in the
Yep.
The developer, he posts on Hacker News and is pretty accessible. Rsync.net have a Debian developer bonus. You have 500 gigs free storage.
Yeah, right.
Debian developers and uses open tools and that kind of thing. So they both contribute.
Yeah, there is actually a what was it? I think there is a bug bounty thing here. I came across it here somewhere. Anyway, yeah. Oh, there we are. And I came across one that actually had all the lists of the payouts, and it was quite extensive, ranging from $1 up to a couple of hundred. Yeah.
I mean, any online service or any company should really have this kind of thing, because if you're not offering to pay for security bugs, someone else will.
Yeah.
And these services do cost money to run, so someone has to store your data and you want it to be there when you need it.
Yep.
So they need decent bandwidth, decent storage, reliable storage.
Yeah, exactly.
That's worth money per month.
Yeah. Where was that, sorry?
And the lowest level bug bounties are security.
Oh, okay. Cosmetic, errors in the Tarsnap source code, or yeah.
Not worth much, but
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I did see a lot of these $1 payouts and stuff. know where I saw that page. Past, here we are. Past bug bounty recipients are listed here. So there is quite a lot of $1 and $2, and I was like, oh, these are not much payouts here. Yep. So the cosmetic errors. Somebody's picked up $89 worth of them. What are these? Harmless bugs. Someone's up to 560. Minor bugs. And just one major bug, given $500. So an AES CTR nonce bug. So that's right at the encryption layer. So. No, I think that's the number used once in the start of the encryption algorithm. So very much the crux of the service is encrypted backup. So anything that's a flaw in the encryption, which could be leveraged to decrypt, is certainly cause for concern. And what are these? Oh, these are the top bug bounty hunters. So Ralph Corduroy, he's up there. I think he's topped out on most of the lists. It's on the harmless bugs. But who's it? Taylor R. Campbell was the encryption one. So yeah, and look, as Nick said, it's good to see these being rewarded, because if this service wasn't paying for them, so ATPs, they'd definitely like to find out stuff about how to leverage this service for their own gains. Yep. Yeah, so look, it suits my needs, and yeah. Anything else?
Impressive bounty, but I'm sure that the hours they put in to find them would be a very poor hourly rate.
Yeah, especially that sheer amount of focus.
I can see one of the names there is a Google security engineer.
Really? Here, yep.
Yeah. Yep. He would be searching for the bugs about payment. Being paid by Google.
Yeah. But look, bug bounties, people make a living off them, fuzzing software and automated tools just for spraying across and fuzzing functions, seeing what they get back and seeing what they can leverage out of them. Some pay quite handsomely too. There's even brokers that will interface between you and the company, so they handle any legal stuff that the company may try to push back at with. If you come to them just as a developer, they'll stand in and be the middleman and negotiate for you, obviously for their cut. But you come as a lonely development to a big multinational, and they'll just want to sort of roll over you with legal stuff. It's good to see that there is this industry of cross-checking. Yeah. I did come, testimonials here. This is where I saw Stripe has been using it. This is the one I was trying to Starfighter. They've got the principal and the CEO of Starfighter. Not quite clicking on that. Do you recall? Oh, sorry. Yep. The users of the service. Look, I wouldn't call myself an expert at all, but I muddle my way through it. It depends on like if you can read some instructions, you can use this service, no worries. Yeah, you don't need any great skills to leverage it. Yeah, you'd be able to read a little bit online within the website here. It's got all the how-to. On FreeBSD, it's available from the packages, but for Linux, you just need to download the signature key, and then you can download. You can compile it all yourself if you so desire. So Michael W. Lucas is a great author. His Tarsnap mastery book's quite comprehensive. So your Starfighter, Pebble, these aren't clicking with me, but
sometimes I want to purchase something.
yeah, exactly. And there's no minimum sign. I think in the documentation that it asks you to start with $5. Whether that's like to put $1 on, like it could get you started, no worries. And it's not even though it's pre-populated, it just is a suggestion of starting with $5. So yeah, start small and go from there. In saying that, I never received an email to say that I'm low on my account. It's just like, well, I thought I better check what I'm down to there. Oh, $6, I'll top that back up again and go from there. Yeah. Anything else? Oh, thanks very much. I was a bit nervous before starting this talk, but yeah, I think it went okay for myself. Cheers. Thanks.